Hey guys, so I wanted to just film a little video talking about my birth story from my first daughter. So my first daughter's name is Amelia, and she was born March 10th, 2016. So I kind of wanted to go over just everything that I went through there because it was an extremely difficult pregnancy and birth. It was very traumatic. I did have preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. So just to kind of start from the beginning here, everything was relatively normal in my pregnancy until I hit about 28 weeks pregnant. When I hit that point, I started having severe upper right quadrant pain and also severe pain right under my sternum to where I could not breathe. It was very intense, very scary. And there were a lot of moments where, you know, I really did think that I was going to die because I wasn't able to breathe. It was very scary. So what ended up happening was I was constantly going to emergency rooms because I was pregnant. I knew something was wrong. I knew that, but I didn't know what was wrong. So I went to probably 3 or 4 different emergency rooms, and each time they could not find anything wrong. They told me it's heartburn, it's the baby up in your rib cage, it's this or that. And I just knew, like, deep inside that something was seriously wrong, and I was being dismissed again and again. It's very traumatic for somebody who's experiencing any type of illness to be dismissed like I was. I remember at one of the hospitals that I was at, I had to be taken there by ambulance. One of the nurses made a comment that she didn't know I could hear, that was, I was exhibiting drug-seeking behavior. And I just remember it went right through me. I was disgusted, I was angry, and I was also really sad because, you know, I never done drugs in my life, and I wanted help. I needed help because I knew something was wrong. Why would I be going to the hospital in an ambulance if something wasn't severely wrong with me? So anyway, we're gonna fast forward a little bit. I went to a regular OB appointment, and I saw a midwife who was absolutely wonderful. I loved her. Her name was Bobby. So I went to see Bobby, and when I was in the room, I was waiting on her to come in, and it was, I'm trying to think. No, so my husband at the time, who I was married to, was not with me. I was by myself. So I'm sitting on the table and waiting for her to come in, and she walked by the door. And I thought, oh, that's odd. And then she turned around and came back, and she looked in and she's like, Morgan, is that you? And I was like, yeah. And she said, oh my God, you're really swollen. I didn't even know that that was you. And at that point, I was like, so this is really bad. So immediately she had me do a urine catch, and she did a dipstick in there, and she told me to head over to the local hospital to labor and delivery because I had preeclampsia. So of course I was panicking. I was like, what does this mean? You know, there's a lot of things that go through your mind, and especially when you're a first-time mom. I had had 2 previous miscarriages before Amelia, and so of course I was on edge already because I had had 2 losses and I was scared. So I went over to the local emergency room hospital, and they took me in, they started monitoring me, and they wanted to start doing a 24-hour urine, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. You pee in a jug for 24 hours, and then they see how much protein is in your urine. So I'm there, I'm texting my husband, and I'm like, you know, I'm scared, I don't know what's going on. They're saying maybe the baby's coming early. And at this point, I was 30 weeks. So, you know, I'm thinking 30 weeks. You know, I can't have a baby at 30 weeks. This is crazy. And the doctor came in, and they looked at me and they said, your blood pressure is extremely high. This is very dangerous. You're probably going to have a baby today, but we need to send you to a different hospital because we cannot take a baby this premature. At that point, my head started spinning. I was terrified. I just wanted whatever I had to do, I was prepared to do it for my baby to make sure that she was okay. So they brought an ambulance, and they took me by ambulance to a bigger hospital that was about 30 minutes away. And there I was checked in. I got into a room, and that was the toughest point in my pregnancy. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit here. My mother and my husband at the time came to the hospital, obviously, to see me and be there with me. And every single day, I was not allowed to get out of bed whatsoever. My blood pressure was so high, they were concerned that if I stood up, I could have a stroke. So they put those, I'm not sure what the correct term is, but they're these things that they put on your legs, and they like puff up, and then they go down, they puff up. So they put those on my legs. They put a catheter in me, and a blood pressure cuff was on my arm at all times. So I couldn't get out of bed, and this was very, very mentally taxing. It was terrifying. Every single time the blood pressure cuff started to go off, I was panicking inside because I was just thinking, I need my baby to stay in. I need her to get bigger, and it was just a very scary time. So my mom was absolutely my saving grace at this point. She didn't leave my side. She stayed right there with me. She was always rubbing my back. She was talking to me. We would watch TV together, and I'm very thankful. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. But she kept me sane. She really did. And the time that I was in the hospital, I was still having these attacks where I couldn't breathe. And every time it would happen, my blood pressure would shoot up. So it was like I couldn't win, and they still didn't know what was wrong. So fast forward, the doctor came in. I was 32 weeks and 4 days. The doctor came in that morning. He said, you know, if your blood pressure continues to go up, we're having a baby today. And I was, of course, terrified. But when I tell you that I had the worst migraine of my life, it was the worst migraine of my life. I couldn't even open my eyes. That is how bad it was. So I was extremely swollen, high blood pressure, and a migraine that would not quit. They were giving me, I remember they were giving me medication through the IV, and it was doing literally nothing for this migraine. And I remember thinking when I was laying there that I was gonna die, That's really what I thought. And, you know, when that's going on, of course you're thinking, how can this be happening? Because I finally got this thing that I always wanted, which was to have a baby, and now I'm gonna die. You know, how can this be? How can this be? And I remember me and my husband having the conversation, like, if something were to happen, what would you do? Or, you know, things like that. And I told him, if anything happens, you make sure that baby's taken care of. You take care of that baby. And he said, well, we can have another baby, but we can't have another you. And it just, it touched me, but at the same time, that baby was everything to me. My daughter was everything to me. And I knew that she needed to be here in this world. So as the day progressed, I was laying in bed. My mom was there, my cousin was there, and my husband was there. And I don't remember anything past the point of talking to the doctor. I don't remember anything at all. So everything that I'm going to tell you now is things that I've been told. So the reason I don't remember anything is because I was put on a magnesium drip. If you have ever been on magnesium in the hospital, you know that it is the worst possible thing that you could be given. It's a nightmare. It makes you so incoherent, and you lose your memory, and you feel like you were hit by a bus. It's terrible. So I was on a magnesium drip because of my blood pressure being so high. So the doctor comes in and he says, you know, it's time to have a baby, and we can prep you for a C-section. And my mom knew how much having a natural birth meant to me. From the beginning, I said, I want to have a natural birth. I want to try to get through it on my own. I don't want to have medication. Which, you know, things happen. You know, things happen. And she spoke up for me. She was really my advocate. And she said to the doctor, listen, it's really important to her to have a natural birth. So can we try? And he said, okay, we will hook her up and try to get this going. But if her blood pressure goes up at all, we have to do a C-section. So they hooked me up to Pitocin. And I remember he checked me in the beginning, and I was not dilated whatsoever. And when I tell you, I thought it had only been about 15 minutes, realistically. I thought he came back in and I was like, wow, like that was really fast. Is that even long enough for anything to happen? And he checked me again and he said, listen, you're not dilating whatsoever. Your blood pressure is so high. I'm very concerned about your health here. We really need to do an emergency C-section. I'm sorry, but there's no option. And I just remember thinking, like, he didn't even give it time. He didn't even, like, see if my body would do what it's supposed to do. And that's when my mother informed me that it had been 5 hours. I was so out of it that I had no concept of time whatsoever. So I thought it had been 15 minutes and it had realistically been 5 whole hours. Nothing had happened. So at this point, I just decided that we need to get this baby out. If you don't know anything about preeclampsia, the first thing that I want to say, because this happened to me, I had a few people say, you know, maybe you're eating too much salt. Maybe you're not eating healthy enough. Maybe you need to drink more water. There is nothing you can do to cause preeclampsia. It's not your fault. It wasn't my fault. It's not your fault. I really struggled a lot with these questions that people would ask me, or they would tell me, like, you know, is it something you're eating? Is it something you're doing? Is it because you're overweight? And I didn't realize until after I went through all this, when I joined the Preeclampsia Foundation organization, that it was not my fault. Nothing you can do will prevent it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So anyway, there was nothing that I could do to prevent this. So they said we're going to have a baby, and my husband got, you know, suited up for the C-section, and they took us back, and I really don't remember much because of how out of it I was. But I barely remember, I remember the feelings. Like, if you've had a C-section, you know, it's like they're like jerking you around. It was very quiet. I did throw up. I remember I had a guy anesthesiologist, and I kind of like looked up at him and I said, I'm gonna throw up. And he said, no, you're not. That's the spinal tap. It makes you feel like you're gonna throw up, but you're not really gonna throw up. And I said, no, I'm gonna throw up. And he's like, no, you're not, it's okay. And then I turned my head and I just started throwing up. He's like, oh my God, you really threw up. And he went and got a bucket and he came over. And it was so funny because he's like, I'm gonna get this out of your hair. You can't meet your baby with throw up in your hair. Like, he's like wiping the throw up out of my hair. And before we had went in for the C-section, the doctor told me, listen, your baby is very small. She's early. So if you don't hear her cry, do not panic. You know, we're gonna do everything we can for her, but I just don't want you to get scared if she doesn't cry. So in my mind, I had prepared to hear nothing, which is really scary to think about. But they pulled her out, and when they did, she started screaming bloody murder. So that was the best sound I had ever heard in my whole life. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. It was great to hear. And they sang happy birthday to her. And they brought her over to me, and they held her down where I could see her. And I just thought, she's so perfect. She's so perfect. And then I don't remember anything after that. So I got taken to recovery, and I didn't wake up actually until late that night. And when I came to, my husband was sitting on one side of my bed, and on the other side was a monitor with a webcam. So basically the nurse told me that I wasn't able to get out of bed because of my blood pressure and where I was on the magnesium. So they had a webcam in my baby's, like her incubator in the NICU, so I could see her, because I physically could not get up to go see her. So I'm looking at her and I'm like, whose baby is this? She looked very much nothing like I thought she would look like. She was blonde. She was blonde. And I'm gonna insert a photo. But I was like, is this my baby? Like, this doesn't look like what I thought my baby would look like. Like, this is crazy. And everybody kept saying how small she was. And on the webcam, she looked big. She looked big. So I was like, what are these people talking about? Like, she looks like a normal baby. Anyway, so the next day, when I was able to get in a wheelchair and go up there and see her, that is when I saw how small she was. I'll see if I can find a picture of her in the incubator, but She was so small. So she was 4 pounds, 1.2 ounces. And I went up to the incubator and I stuck my hand in there, and her little hand was open, and I stuck my finger in her hand and she grabbed it. And it was like the best moment ever. It was really scary, but it was the best. It was the best moment. And I just couldn't believe everything that I had went through. But that's not all. So I was discharged, and I went up to stay in the NICU with Amelia. And one day while I was up there, I remember standing beside the incubator, just looking at her. And then the next thing I remember is I woke up and I was on the floor, and there was a nurse there. Are you okay? Are you okay? What happened? What happened? And I guess I had passed out, fainted, I don't know. They put me in a wheelchair. They took me downstairs to the emergency room because I was discharged. And my mom came from an hour away, always coming to take care of me. And they were saying, once again, we don't know what's wrong, nothing's wrong. And it was my mom who actually spoke up and said, has anybody checked her gallbladder? Like, has anybody checked it? Can you check it? And they were like, no, you know, we haven't checked it. And she's like, well, can you? So they did, and immediately they saw the problem. So I had to have surgery immediately to have my gallbladder removed after just having a C-section. And that was pretty terrible. But I ended up finding out that the attacks I was having where I couldn't breathe was gallbladder attacks. So it makes you feel like you can't breathe. It kind of feels like a heart attack. So I felt relieved, I guess, in a sense, because I finally had answers. Like, I knew what happened and what was wrong with me, and that I was not crazy. Because when you go for so long with some type of medical issue and everybody's saying you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, you start to think, like, am I crazy? Am I losing it? What is happening to me? And I finally had somebody tell me, you're not crazy. This is what is happening to you, but now it's fixed. And that was another good moment because, you know, I really started to believe that I was like making something up in my head because nobody could figure out what was wrong. And it took my mom demanding for them to do an ultrasound on my gallbladder for us to find out. So, but anyway, my daughter was in the NICU for 32 days, and that time was only to learn to eat and to gain some weight. So she got to come home after that, and I was there almost every day with her. If you've ever had a child in the NICU, you know how hard that is, and having to leave your baby there feels, it's unnatural. It's unnatural because when you go into the hospital to have a baby, you're thinking, I'm gonna leave with my baby, and that just wasn't something I was able to do. And it's heartbreaking. So any parents out there that I've ever had to deal with something like that, I understand, I commend you, and you're strong and you can get through it. If you're going through it now, you can get through it. Everything's gonna be okay, and you're a good parent. You know, you're a good parent. You're not a bad parent if you have to leave for a day to get sleep in a bed, or to do laundry, or to go drive 2 miles down the street to go get McDonald's because all you're eating is hospital food. You're not a bad parent for those things. So please take it easy on yourself. But anyway, that's pretty much everything. Thank goodness I did not have postpartum preeclampsia. I wouldn't wish that experience on anybody. So that's all on that. I was thinking of doing a video on my postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. That's something that I don't really hear a lot of people talk about, but I'm not sure like if that's something anybody would want to see or hear about. If it is, please comment and let me know. I'd be happy to do a video on that. Mine was very severe, but it's not something I'm ashamed of anymore. So it's not something I'm scared to talk about. Anyways, I have a happy and healthy almost 5-year-old. Amelia is almost 5 and she's thriving. She's beautiful, she's smart, she's spunky, she's got an attitude, and it's sometimes really hard to believe that she started so tiny and frail. So anyway, I'll put an updated photo in here, and thank you for watching this video. Please like, please subscribe if you thought that this was a good video. If you want to see more videos, you can turn the bell notification on. I'm trying to build a supportive community here, and I would love to have you be a part of it. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.